we are excited to bring back for second consecutive week as he joins us every week, our guy from the All-City NFL show, Brian Baldinger. Baldy, how we doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good, guys. I mean, we've had a solar eclipse. We've got the Masters starting. We saw the men's, women's MCA finals, and we're 2 weeks away from the draft. I mean, you can't get any more excited than that.
You study the draft every year, Baldy, and it does feel like there is legitimate momentum for this class in particular to be, at least pre-draft, relatively strong. Like, do you get that sense, especially like it's hard for Cardinal fans, myself, other people, to consider a trade down package from 4 to 11 potentially with Minnesota, passing on what I think is going to be a blue chip top 10. Do you get that sense that the top 10 this year is a differentiator compared to years prior?
Well, I think it's building momentum like that. But history says that if the first 4 picks are quarterbacks, that they're not all going to be good. There's going to be busts in there. I mean, whenever it's just the top 3 that are quarterbacks, it's never 3 great players. So every draft has its busts, regardless of the momentum, regardless of how they've tested and how we've sort of stacked them. It could be injuries. It could be wrong organization, bad organizations where players kind of get lost. But I do feel like between the quarterbacks that everybody's talking about, between the receivers everybody's talking about, and then the offensive linemen, I feel like there is a pretty stacked top 10 in this draft right now.
So if you're on the outside looking in of the top 10, if the Cardinals do pull the trigger on a deal that could potentially put them at 11 where the Vikings are, I mean, you still feel that Monty Osfort, and he would be potentially armed with 3 first-round picks, has the ability to maximize that with the prospects that will still be on the board?
I look at teams that have had 3 first-round picks. I mean, recently the Raiders did. Josh Jacobs was the best of them. Cleveland Farrell. I mean, it really didn't work out. The Detroit Lions back in the 2000s had 3 first-round picks. That didn't really work out. That's not to say that Monty can't pull, 3 studs if they would do something like that. They've got right now 6 of the top 90 picks.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of picks to begin with. I mean, you can only really develop so many rookies. They've got 6 of the top 90. If they want to go top heavy and go after star, real star power, they certainly have that flexibility to do it.
One of those options you would assume at 11, if the top 3 receivers are gone, maybe they're not inclined to take an offensive lineman. We talked about it, Baldy. Maybe you go and you get the first or second best defensive player in this draft.
Yeah.
Who right now would be warranted, in your opinion, of the 11th overall pick defensively? Is there a player or 2 that you think, okay, that's not a reach, even in an offensive-rich draft?
Yeah. Well, I think Dallas. I mean, I think Dallas Turner out of Alabama is not a reach. I mean, when you watch him and you watch his moves, his power, the level of competition week in, week out, he looks like he's worthy of a top, 10 to 15 pick, and a guy that can start and really ignite a defense. Maybe not on the same level as Will Anderson. Will Anderson dominated the SEC from the day that he stepped into Tuscaloosa. I don't know if he's on that level, but he's bigger, stronger, faster than Will Anderson. Not to say that he can't do it. Jared Verse at Florida State is a guy certainly, I think worth the mention because of his size and the caliber of athlete that he is. I think there's a couple corners that are certainly worthy of, a top 15 pick, whether it is Terrion Arnold at Alabama or Quinyon Mitchell at Toledo. I think some of these corners are going to go, and they're pretty. I think they're the type of corner that you put them up against the number 1 wide receiver, and you have a pretty good chance of contending with that number 1 wide receiver.
Baldy, can you fill my co-host here in on Quinyon Mitchell? He has so many concerns that he played at Toledo, but I saw firsthand in Mobile at the Senior Bowl somebody that can compete at this level and compete at a very high level.
Well, not just that. And, the Senior Bowl was good for him because that's really what the Senior Bowl does. It allows guys that play at that MAC level or below to go compete with the other guys. And he did that. But, I think sometimes speed is overrated. But when I watch his 4.33 speed, like his ability to break on a ball is real. Like that looks faster than a lot of other guys. His foot speed, his quickness, change of direction. And then his tackling, the way that he hits and wraps up, like I think he's going to be. I mean, Terry and Arnold had a great year this year, and before the season started, everybody was talking about Kool-Aid, and really Terry on the year that he had between his tackling, the physicality, and then his the plays that he made in almost every single game. I think he jumped in front of Kool-Aid, but I mean, I think Quinion is right there with him right now.
So Bo's being a smartass. I'm worried about non-Power 5 guys for a Cardinal team. Listen, they just need to hit safe picks in the first round, something they've never historically done, Baldy. So on the subject of that, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, give me a couple guys you feel like maybe aren't safe, maybe aren't bust-proof, but you feel really comfortable that their game has a chance to translate to the NFL level where at least they have a high floor.
Well, I mean, look, you talk about safe picks. I mean, Paris Johnson Jr. was a safe pick. I think he played every snap for Arizona last year. And, he's a great kid. And I thought he had a good season. I thought the offensive line really came together as the season went on, and he was a big part of it. I would say that it's hard for me to believe that Joe Alt isn't a safe pick. My brother played with his dad in Kansas City for a long time. His brothers were professional hockey players. I mean, I just can't believe that Joe Alt's not going to be a really good player. Like, he might not be the best tackle 2 years from now in the NFL, but he's going to be a safe pick. He's not going to hurt you. I got to believe that Marvin Harrison is going to be a great player. You go into Columbus, Ohio, and you're dominating with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson. All the guys are there, and you're like holding your own and pulling your own weight from the very moment he got there. And then his size. But I love Rome Odunze as well. And I can make the case that Rome Odunze might be a better pro than Marvin, just simply because of what he's already accomplished and just how smooth and fluid he is and how he ran. I think there's a bunch of guys in this draft at the offensive line position. I think Caleb is a safe pick. I think there's a bunch of offensive linemen that are safe picks, regardless of where they get taken.
I don't think we've ever point blank asked you this, but it's great having you back. As far as the Cardinals and the situation they're in, if you're Monty Ossenfort, if you're the one calling the shots, you're sitting at 4, and the Vikings approach you with potentially 3 first-round picks, 11, 23, and a 2025 first, or you have the opportunity to take Marvin Harrison Jr., which one would you be more inclined to do?
That's a great question. I would probably take the trade. I would take the trade just because I think you're going to get really good players, maybe not to the caliber that Marvin is, but I mean, if you're still able to get, I don't know, Rome Odunze at 11 or Malik Neighbors at 11 and get an offensive lineman and get a starting defensive end, like, you got to look at the numbers. I mean, if you pick in the first round, the chance of those guys hitting are a great deal more from a percentage standpoint over somebody in the second or third round. So I think I would take the bounty that Minnesota might give up to go up to number 4.
Are you of the mindset, Baldy, that you have to draft for your division? I mean, the Cardinals play in an incredibly robust, physical NFC West. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and now, Seattle's had a regime change, but historically it pushed this franchise around. Like, I'm somebody who's advocated for Marvin and 4, but I understand if Ossenfort and Gannon want to say, you know what, we just want good players, put their hand in the dirt and can push people around. And the Cardinals have been pushed around by the NFC West for the better part of 10 years.
Well, if you're in this division now with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, you better be ready to defend. You better be able to defend elite passing games and very good running games. And when you look at Christian McCaffrey and Kyron Williams last year, they were number 1 and number 2 in rushing yards per game.
Yeah.
So both teams start with the ability to run the ball. And so you better be able to stack up and limit those explosive runs from both those players. And then they have elite passing games. I mean, we've seen what Cooper Kupp and Puka has done. We've seen what, Kittle and Ayuk and Debo have done. I mean, you better be a complete defense to try and contend. And then if you look at what Seattle's doing now, I mean, Seattle brought the offense coordinator from the University of Washington in. If you watch Michael Penix and Rome Odunze, and you watch that offense, I know you did, in the Pac-12, like, nobody played bombs away offense the way the Washington Huskies did. And if any of that comes to Seattle and you're looking at DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, it looks a little bit like what we just watched with Jalen Polk, McMillan, and Odunze. And it is, you better be able to defend the deep part of the field if it comes like we watched at Washington.
I feel like JG, Nick Rollis, they do a pretty good job. Their defenses do. They don't like to get beat deep. They don't like to give up the big play. They did a relatively good job with not a great roster, not great roster defensively last year. I'll get you out on this. At this point in draft season, have you identified your guys in this draft, Baldy? Who are a couple of your guys in this draft that we can look towards draft day, that glorious 3-day stretch?
I always start, inside. So, I mean, as soon as I saw West Virginia play and I watched Zach Frazier, I texted a friend of mine who's the personnel director for a team, and I said, could he start at center for you tomorrow? And he goes, he might be our center for tomorrow. It was just that fast. You could see it. But then Graham Barton, I went to Duke. I met the kid last year at OL Masterminds in Frisco, Texas. He was training with Duke Manoweather down there. This is a kid that started at center at Duke as an 18-year-old freshman. And then, the last 2 years at left tackle, going up against, the best that Florida State had or Clemson or whatever. He looks like he could play right now. And he tested really well. I mean, I think J.C. Latham, I had a buddy of mine who is a starting tackle in this league. Just look at the top 5 tackles for me. And I wanted to know what he thought. And he had Latham right there at the very top. I know other guys have come out of Alabama and there's been hit or miss on the offensive line, but I feel like J.C. Latham is a guy that's going to hit. I think Fuaga is going to be a great player. I think Fuatano is going to be a Pro Bowl guard in this business. I can look at a bunch of offensive linemen and say that's the strength of this draft.
He's the host of the All City NFL podcast, Brian Baldinger. Baldy, where are you going to be on draft night, rounds 1 through 3?
Well, I'm going to be with the Jets on Thursday night, opening night, and then I'm going to be in L.A. Friday and Saturday and Sunday at our studios at the NFL Network. So get out of New York and head out west and get ready for Friday and Saturday's picks and make a full evaluation of what everybody did with the all-inclusive report card that you got to put out, obligatory report card sometime on Sunday or Monday.
Well, the Cardinals are going to have a ton of picks that you're going to have to go
I'm
down,
looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I really am. I'm looking forward to this because I think, if you wanted to sell hope to an Arizona Cardinal fan right now, you just look at what the Houston Texans did last year and look how quickly now, look, CJ, they struck gold and he was the difference, but the coach, the defense was, top 10, what they did in the draft, trading up to get Will Anderson, whatever, free agency in the draft, they did really good and they did great in free agency this year. There is no 5-year plans.
Mm-hmm.
It can turn around in a year if you're really smart and really savvy at what you're doing.
Baldy, thank you so much for the time today. We'll bring it back next week in preparation for what is going to be, I think, a historic draft. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Look forward to it. See you.
Fired up. The best insight, the best segment of the week continues with our guy Baldy on Baldy's Breakdowns.